I'm sure we've all been there. You're sitting in class, trying your best not to fall asleep as you're copying down notes from some boring slideshow. You then go home and read over those lines. You maybe even make some flashcards and you read over them over and over again. You then go to school the very next day and you take the test. You make a B, leave the class, and promptly forget everything that you learned. When school functions this way, and this is what learning really looks like, well then students only get the opportunity to memorize the concepts and nothing more. They don't get the opportunity to ask questions, debate, research, synthesize, collaborate, or criticize the content. No, all they get to do is memorize it, regurgitate it on a test, and call it a day. Yet what if I told you that because of this, school is failing us students? It's failing to change from a system that is mainly devoted to memorization to one that is devoted to thinking critically. When education expert Tony Wagner asked CEOs and educators alike what the most important skill is when looking for new employees or students, the majority said critical thinking. So why is this skill so important in our modern world? Is it not the function of our education? Well, first, what even is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the objective analysis and observation of an issue in order to form a judgment. But how do we foster critical thinking? First, we need to look at what school looks like right now. My experience thus far has been filled with reading textbooks, copying down notes, reading books I'm just not interested in, and completing endless worksheet pages, none of which have prioritized critical thinking. But you know what does? Hands-on learning and project-based learning. Hands-on learning is where students are guided to gain knowledge through experience and interaction, while in project-based learning, students gain knowledge through experiencing and solving real-world problems. In both cases, students take the reins and lead the teaching, rather than a teacher dictating what they should do every step of the way. When students participate in project-based learning, they are more engaged and hold the content for longer than if they were given the traditional textbook or lecture. A study from Purdue University found that students who use project-based learning increase long-term retention of knowledge, score better on tests, increase skills such as problem solving and collaboration, and even increase their attitude towards the content that is being taught. Not only that, but students who use project-based learning are more engaged in the content. They also solve their own problems with the content as well and form their own opinions, rather than a teacher telling them what to do. Thus, both approaches are more stimulating. But how can we pivot away from a system that is mainly devoted to the memorization of facts to one that is devoted to critical thinking? First, we need to stay off the path of memorization-based learning and switch onto one of critical thinking. Most students simply memorize the content just to make a good grade and nothing more. They don't actually learn the content. All they do is memorize it. A lot of educators are reluctant to transition from a system that is mainly devoted to the memorization of facts to that of one which is devoted to critically thinking. I suspect a number of reasons, but I feel that the two most common reasons would be control and effort. Teachers struggle with letting go of control of the classroom, and I get it. They have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of concepts to teach, and passing the baton to a bunch of teenagers can be really intimidating. Secondly, when making lessons or lectures where students have to solve problems, takes a lot of effort. And frankly, it doesn't look like traditional schooling, is messy, and can get a bad rap. So here is some ways that we can apply critical thinking to learning to make it more engaging and more authentic. First, instead of multiple choice tests, we need to have students write and apply their knowledge. For example, in world history class, Instead of learning the minute details of two empires, we can create a mock town hall where two different sides of government pitch their benefits to an audience. And in English, we could create a replica brochure for a local business to practice our writing skills instead of filling out endless grammar worksheets. And in math, we could pretend to be a local business that needs to project our profit margins based on past year's data. And in world language classes, we can solve a crisis with urgency, but only using the language that we are learning. And for in science, we can do a unit lab based on what we've just learned. When applying critical thinking to education, the possibilities are endless. Yet, if we want this to be the case nationwide, we need to apply and stress the importance of critical thinking. It is a skill that we as students need for our future if we want to become better employees and citizens that are informed and respectful. So if anyone in the field of education sees this talk, I hope you ask yourself, what am I doing in my classroom to promote critical thinking? Teachers, how might you incorporate critical thinking into your criteria? If we really want to see future generations strive and make progress, then we need to stress the importance of critical thinking. Tony Wagner said that the most important things is allowing students to ask their own questions and then giving them the space to find the answers. If we make this a bedrock to teaching students, who knows what lines we can cross and what boundaries we could break. Thank you.